Here's today's message and what I believe to be the truth for you. Your best work is still ahead of you. Your most impactful, authentic content is still ahead of you. That is, if you are dedicated to creating consistently, to practicing, exploring, experimenting with your ideas, with your art, if you're dedicated to that consistency of practice and noticing among all the things you put out, what is resonating with your ideal audience, if you're dedicated to that process, then your best work will always still be ahead of you. Meaning, the most impact you're going to make is going to be continually in the future. You're going to make more and more positive impact. Now, how do we get ourselves to be dedicated to that consistent practice? What will draw you forward to that kind of consistent creating? Well, I'll share one thing that helps me a lot, which is to make sure I connect before I start creating, to make sure I connect in my mind and in my heart with my most ideal true fan. And I wonder, when you are creating, who do you have in your mind and in your heart? For a lot of us, when we start out with, small, tiny audience, who do we have in our audience? Those are the people we think about. And a lot of those people in our audience might be family members, some old friends. And how do they make you feel in terms of the ability to really express yourself? Really, when I first started, I only had some family members and a few friends looking at my content, and I didn't feel able to really express myself. I don't know about you, but I felt quite timid because they knew me as timid George. Now you might be, I don't know, maybe surprised. Some of you might be surprised by that, but I grew up extremely shy. I was the third youngest child in my family, and my two older brothers are closer in age, so they always were able to talk more like adults with my parents, whereas I was always like the baby brother. And naturally, they're like, "Oh, you don't know what you're talking." I often heard this: "You don't know what you're talking about. Just let the adults talk, right? Let the adults make the decisions and find the solutions and all that. You don't know what you're talking about." And also, I grew up having immigrated from Taiwan to the United States at the tender age of 7. I was still learning my mother tongue, Chinese. That's what people speak in Taiwan, Chinese. I was still learning Chinese, and yet now I have to learn a new language and a new culture. And in the mostly white neighborhood in Southern California back in the 80s, mostly white, mostly there was very few people who looked like me, and my school was like 95% white, something like that. Anyway, I felt really out of place and therefore very timid for most of my youth growing up. So therefore, when I started creating content, that was still the context that I had, that kind of timidness. And yet I knew that there was a potential within myself. And I believe that to be true for you too. You have some potential, more powerful expression within yourself that you haven't yet unlocked. I mean, today I am so different than I was 15 years ago when I started my business, or even 10 years ago when I started creating content. I'm so different today because I have practiced since the last 10 years, continually experimenting and expressing more of my authenticity. And how do I do that? Because I keep in my mind and in my heart the image of the ideal audience member, the true fan. Did you know that there are more than 5 billion internet users? 5 billion. That's astounding. Now, if you took 1% of that 5 billion, that's still 500 million, or sorry, 50 million people. So imagine, out of all the internet users in the world, you take 1% of the people who are most resonant towards you, like most connected to your energy signature. They just, when they find you, they just naturally feel drawn towards you and want to watch more, or read more, or look at more of your content. Okay, 1% of the internet users, 50 million. Now take the most resonant people of those 50 million, let's take 1% of those. Now you have 500,000 people who are even more resonant with your stuff, with your natural expression, with your most authentic expression. And now let's take the 1% of those most resonant people, and you have 5,000. 5,000 of your truest fans, the people for whom You can make no mistake. Because if you, as long as you show up with a positive intention to genuinely explore your authenticity and to serve your most ideal audience member, to serve their upliftment, to serve their progress, to serve their transformation, to serve their growth, to serve their healing, if you show up with that intention, whatever so-called mistakes you make, your truest fans don't see any mistakes. They see the uniqueness and the natural attractiveness of who you are. I have that person, those 5,000 in my mind when I create. That's why I'm able to express more and more of my authenticity, unlock more and more of the truthful expression that makes me feel alive. And I wish that for you as well. So going forward today, before you create, or to include into your creation process the moment of connection in mind and heart with your 5,000 true fans, because they're looking for you. And if you don't show up frequently, they may never find you. So go and keep your dedication of practicing creating consistently, publishing consistently, so that your 5,000 can find you. I hope this is helpful. Thanks.